So the Bhagavad Gita is considered as the essence of Vedic knowledge, and we see that a lot of the very interesting and the important and very helpful truths about life are discussed in the Gita. And I think we are having this session in 2 classes of the 5 topics covered in the Gita. The 2 remaining topics for today are Ishwara and Jiva. Who is Jiva? Who are we? And who is Ishwara? Who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So before we get into the topic, I'd like to tell an interesting story that illustrates one of these topics, which is who we are. So there was once a very rich merchant. This merchant had 4 wives, and he used to take very good care of his different wives. He took care of them to different extents. One wife, his first wife was very, very dear to him. He gave her whatever she asked, and he would pay a lot of attention to make sure that she's always well taken care of. And he was there to quickly answer to any of her requests or any of her needs. Then his second wife, he was actually very proud of his second wife, and he would introduce her with a lot of pride and joy whenever there was any social gatherings. And she was also quite dear to him. His third wife was a very close confidant, and whenever there was any tough situations, he would turn to his third wife and get some advice and get the consult her. And so in that sense, his third wife was also quite dear, but for those specific reasons. His fourth wife was very, very loyal to him. She was the one who was actually taking care of all the household for him. But somehow he didn't have any attraction for her. In fact, he neglected her. Even though she would she would always be very attentive and very careful in taking care of all the household matters. He would generally ignore her. It so happened, time passed, and he suddenly fell ill. They called for all the best of the doctors. Since he was a rich man, he had access to the best of medical help. They all came, they all looked at him, and unfortunately everybody gave the same verdict. No, this is beyond our hands at this point. All you can do is pray and see what happens. So the merchant was very dejected that he was about to die. And he realized death was very near. So he thought, I have 4 wives. Now I should be able to take somebody with me onto my next life. So first thing he did, he called for his first wife and said, "Oh wife, I have taken such wonderful care of you throughout my whole life. Will you please accompany with me to my next life? I am on my deathbed. The doctors have given me just a few days to live. And I was hoping that you would come with me." As soon as this wife heard about the imminent death of the merchant, she just looked at him and just turned her back and went away from there. And the merchant was very disturbed. Oh, what is this? I had depended so much on her and she went away like this. I thought, okay, no, my second wife, she is definitely going to accompany me. Let me ask her and plead her. And so he called for his second wife and said, "Oh dear wife, I've always held you in such high esteem. I've always showed you off amongst all my friends and relatives. And you've always been with me. Will you please accompany me on my deathbed? Will you please come with me?" The second wife said, "I'm so young and beautiful. You are in your deathbed. You're going to die. No, I'm not going to accompany you. I'm going to go and remarry as soon as you're dead." And she went away. And the merchant was even more dejected. Oh, what is this? No, wait, I still have a third wife. She has been my close confidant throughout my life. And I'm sure she's going to help me in this time of need. She's going to take care of me. And so he uh, he called for his third wife and said, "Oh dear wife, you've always been my close confidant, right? You always so wonderfully um, been there, to help me in my times of need. I'm now on my deathbed. Will you please accompany me into the next life?" For which the third wife said, "I know you're very dear to me. I really want to accompany you. But unfortunately, I cannot. At the most, I can come till your grave. At that point, I can't really accompany you anymore." The merchant was totally dejected and he was very despondent and he was feeling so helpless. At that time, he heard a feeble voice in the back and he could recognize that was the voice of his fourth wife. She said, "I will accompany you. I am there with you through thick and thin. I'm always taking care of you and your household, even though you have neglected. I will accompany you into your next life." And the merchant just looked at her. She was thin and frail and in rags and dirty. And he was grateful that she would accompany him. But then, at the same time, he felt very sad that he had not taken good care of her whole life. So this is a story that is told to illustrate a very important lesson that's taught in the Bhagavad Gita. I'd like to see if Somebody knows the answer. I know it's a little tough to do this over, there are so many people, but you can, if you know the answers to the four wives, you can either put it in the chat, or you can, unmute yourself and you can say the answer, or you can show your hand and they can unmute you as well. Anybody knows who the first wife is, who took care so much and she just turned her back and went away? Okay, no takers for first wife. Any takers for who the second wife is, who used to show off so much? Okay, we need give an answer. The first wife is the body. Yes, perfect answer. Right answer. The first wife is the body. He was always very attentive to taking care of the body, making sure that, it is always nice and well kept and all that. But when death comes, that's the first thing that you have to leave. Right? The body is just left behind. And at that point, nobody even wants to look at the body. Right? Unfortunately, the body starts putrefying very quickly, starts smelling bad. Fluids start coming out of different holes of the body. And people are in a hurry to go put the body cremate the body. Right? In spite of all effort we put, it doesn't accompany us. So what is the second wife? Anybody wants to take a turn who the second wife is? You can put in the chat or you can unmute and say. Second wife he was showing her off to everybody. And then at the deathbed, she said, "Oh, I'm so young and beautiful. I will go and marry somebody else." The second wife is your wealth and belongings. We're so proud of our wealth. We're also proud of our wealth. But then at the time of death, the wealth cannot accompany us. It has to be given away. It will go to somebody else. Right? So that's the second wife. The third wife, anybody knows the third wife was a close confidant and who said, "At best, I can come to the grave." The third wife is our family and friends. They're very dear to us. The relations, yes. Renu came up with the answer, relations. Very good. Because, they want to accompany us. They really care about us. But unfortunately, they cannot. At best, they can come up to the grave, not beyond that. And who is the fourth wife? This is an easy one.
Soul.
Soul, yes, wonderful. The fourth wife is the soul, right? So, the soul is the one we would have neglected, our whole life, but the soul accompanies with us, right? So, there are very interesting lessons about the soul that Krishna explains. The very first thing, let's actually read from the different chapters of the Gita, the different verses of the Gita, and understand what does the Shastras talk about, what does the Bhagavad Gita talk about the soul. Okay, so the very first thing, they begin with actually the first 6 chapters of the Gita talk about you. Who are you? Right? So if you see here right in the beginning of the Gita, when Arjuna is telling, "Oh, I can't really fight with my relatives and family and friends. How can I, even if get this kingdom at the cost of their lives, how can I do this?" And Krishna is telling, that you are lamenting for which something that should not be lamented. He's telling, he's giving several examples to describe how you, the soul, is different from the body. Right? Um, he is telling, he's giving an example. Vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya. Vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya. Jirnani means old. Vasamsi means clothes. He's saying just like when the clothes get old, you discard the clothes and you put on new clothes. Similarly, Krishna is explaining in the Gita that you are not the body, you are the soul. And when this body becomes unfit, then you actually transmigrate from one body to another. Another example Krishna is giving, he's saying, Yantra Rudhani Mayaya. The body is compared to an yantra, to a machine. Yantra Rudhani. Rudha means to climb. So you have climbed into this machine, this yantra, and who has created this yantra? Maya. Maya has created this yantra for you. Right? So there's another example that's given. And there is let me just share my screen for a second. And we'll talk about a few. There's one more example that's given. I will share that example as a picture, and then we can all try to identify this thing. This is a very famous example. I'll share my screen. Hopefully you can all see this. Okay. I think many of you are on the phone. Some of you are in the online session. So I'm showing a picture of a chariot, and there is a chariot driver, there is a passenger, there is a driver, and there are 5 horses. So let's ask this question. This illustration is again used in the Gita to describe the body. And the Gita explains that not only, body doesn't mean just this gross body that we see externally, but there is also a subtle body. Okay, can somebody tell me what the 5 horses represent?
Senses, 5 senses.
Yes, as you can see in this illustration as well, you see the illustration of a eyes, of the nose, of the ear, right? These are called knowledge acquiring senses. Right? You have 2 eyes, you have a nose for smelling, eyes for seeing, you have ears for hearing, you have a tongue for tasting, and then you have skin for feeling. So these are the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, and this represents the gross body. It said that our senses are like 5 impetuous horses that are pulling the chariot in different directions. Now, we see here that the horses are held by reins. And then there is a chariot driver. So what do the reins represent? Anybody knows?
Is it our mind?
The mind, yes. Wonderful. The reins represent the mind. And then let's understand the chariot driver as well. And then we can understand the connection between the two. Who is the chariot driver?
Intelligent.
So intelligence, wonderful. So the chapters explain that we have a subtle body, and the subtle body is made up of three elements: the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. So these are the five elements, the three elements of the subtle body. Now, what is the function of the mind? The Shastras explain the mind's function is to keep generating thoughts, different thoughts. For example, if I tell you, please don't think of any sweets, immediately our mind is generating so many images of these sweets, different kinds of sweets. Somebody would have thought of a gulab jamun, somebody thought of rasgulla, somebody thought of jalebi, and cake and chocolate, whatever, right? So the mind's job is to keep generating different thoughts, continuously keep generating thoughts. And then the intelligence job is to take decisions on whether we should accept or reject those thoughts. Is this thought good for me? Is this thought bad for me? Will this thought help me advance, or will this thought hold me back? That's the job of the intelligence. And finally, the chariot passenger is us. Now, if you have a controlled mind and a good intelligence that's able to determine, then you can still hold the horses under control, even though the horses can be impetuous. But if you don't have a strong intelligence and nicely trained mind, then the horses will pull you in different directions, and you can go and fall in a ditch. There's a verse, it's called the Atma verse, in which it's the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is explaining Atma Neva Atma. So he's referring to, the word Atma is used to refer to both the soul. Atma is used to refer to the body, to the mind, to the intelligence, then ultimately to the soul. And it is explaining the hierarchy of these things, and it's telling us how we can control our total body, what are the different ways we can do that. And so we see here that the gross body is explained to be made up of 5 material elements. So this is just one way of explaining. Earth, Bhumi, Apo, Analo, Vayu, Kham is ether. These are Sanskrit words. Bhumi is earth, water is Apo, Analo is fire, Vayu is air, and ether is Kham. This is the gross body. The gross body can also be described in forming of, like in modern day, we talk about other kinds of elements. You can use that. There are other ways of explaining, but this is all the gross body. The subtle body is made of the mind, intelligence, and the false ego. Okay. Then there's also description of the soul and the transmigration of the soul. This is a very famous picture. Srila Prabhupada got his disciples to make a diorama out of. Actually, this diorama is there in our ISKCON temple in Los Angeles. This is showing the transmigration of the soul. Right? Now, the soul is the same. Just the body keeps changing. They were all some children before. and a small child, and then we become a toddler, and then we became a youth, and then an adult. Then you got little middle-aged, you got older, and then you die, and then you go back to where you came from. But the Atma is the constant factor across all of this. That's how I remember we can say, oh, I was a child one day. You remember your youth. You remember your, younger days. Now you might be older. Some of you might be still very young. So different remembrances we have because we are the constant factor, even though the body keeps changing. Right? And then after this, Krishna is explaining that not only just like we were once a child and we were youth and we die, but also explain that there is transmigration happening from different species of life. 8,400,000 species are talked about in the Shastras. Jalaja Navalakshani. Jalaja. Jalaja means in the water, Navalakshani. There are 9 lakh species in water, or 900,000. And different species are explained like that. And it is said that the Atma is the same in all these species. We're all the same. It is just that the soul transmigrates from one lower species to higher species and finally gets to the human species. There is a subtle description of, when we say human species in the Shastras, the species are talked about. You can see here the different species are explained over here. Now, when it talks about species in the Shastras, they're talking about the 3 modes of material nature are described, which is the mode of goodness, Sattva Guna, the mode of passion, which is Rajoguna, and the mode of ignorance, which is Tamoguna. These 3 modes, the combination of these 3 modes leads to different species. You should have a certain level of Sattva Guna to be called a human species. And the lower forms of life have more Rajoguna and more Tamoguna. So that description is given in the Gita. And then there is another beautiful sloka that explains how the soul transmigrates. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajati ante kalevaram tam tam evesya supanteya. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Whatever consciousness you have at the time of death, whatever forms you are thinking of at the time of death, that is going to determine the next life. One may ask, oh, can I do all kinds of nonsense the whole life and suddenly think about good things at death? That question might come up. In the Shastras, it is explained that sort of our life flashes in front of us at the time of death. And whatever attachments you have developed, raga it is called, whatever attachments of asanas you built, those attachments will form a consciousness at the time of death, and that will determine our next life. So let me pause here for a second and see if anybody has any questions or comments about this important topic of the jiva, or the soul. Anybody has any questions, comments? You can either ask it directly or you can post in the chat. Okay. So it looks like everybody is quite happy with where we are. So we are now going to switch to the second important description of second important of the 5 lessons, and this lesson is talking about Ishwara, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is also a very important topic, and the way Krishna describes this in the Bhagavad Gita, he says that, in this body, not only there is this Atma, this soul, but there's also the Paramatma, or the super soul. And several examples are given in the Shastras to describe the role of these two, Atma and the Paramatma. The Jivatma, which is us, and the Paramatma, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Paramatma who is present in the heart. And where is Paramatma present? Hruddeshe Arjuna Tishtati. Krishna is telling in the Gita that Hruddeshe, in the region of the heart, is where both the Atma and Paramatma are present. So there's an example given of a tree, and this is a fruit tree. There are several fruits growing in the tree, and there are two birds that are sitting on this tree. Now, one of the birds is eating the fruits of the tree. The other bird is just eagerly looking and watching, observing. So this describes, the two important elements, the Atma and the Paramatma. So the Jivatma, who is eating the fruits of the tree, has to experience happiness and distress based on the fruits. If you get a good fruit that is very nice and juicy, you feel very happy. Some fruits are bitter. Some fruits have, some germs in them and can give you a lot of suffering. So based on the kind of fruit that you're eating, you can experience happiness and distress and different situations. Okay. So that is one of the descriptions given in the Gita of the difference between Atma and Paramatma. I'll just show you a slide that talks about the description of the soul and super soul and differences. The soul, Atma, is us, Jivatma, and the super soul is God or Paramatma. And then Krishna says, we are Anu, we are infinitesimal, and the Lord is Vibhu, or infinite. We are Kshetragna, the Kshetra is the body, and we are Kshetragna, we are aware of the body, but I have limited intelligence, limited awareness of the body, and that too only my body. You see, right now, I can move my hands, I can sense, my hand touching my other hand. I have some sense of Kshetragna, that I'm aware of this body. But even, I can't understand how my heart is beating, how my stomach is digesting, right? How food is moving in my intestine, I can't make out. How blood is flowing in my body, I can't really sense. I know it is happening because, we see that, the effects of that. but I don't know. But the super soul Paramatma is cognizant of everyone and everything. He is fully aware of all jivas. You know, the Bhagavad Gita has explained that the Lord Paramatma is present in each and every atom and in each and every body. Right? And then the description of how the Atma is a servitor, a loving servitor, and the Paramatma is Ishwara, or eternally a loving master. Now, please understand that the word loving is very important. When you hear the word servant, master, usually we have a very adverse reaction. What is this? We are servants. Is that our position? But God is not that kind of a master. God is a loving master. And it is said that if we are eager to serve the Lord is so much more eager to serve us. It is said that, in the Shastras, it is explained how the Lord is looking for opportunities to serve the Lord, and we see in different pastimes of the Lord, He expresses those, His intense desire to do that. So ultimately, we have the same quality of God, but we are different in quantity. Another description is given that Sat, Chit and Ananda, these are the qualities of the soul. Sat means we are eternal. Chit means we are full of knowledge. And Ananda means we are full of bliss. So the Paramatma is also Satchidananda, but is the ultimate reservoir of Satchidananda. And we are an infinitesimal portion of that. Okay. Let me pause here and see if anybody has any questions or comments on this. Okay. I think let's just continue further talking about the differences between what is the description of the Ishwara, or definition of God, that's given in the Gita. Okay, there is a question. Is soul called Brahman? Very interesting question. Yes, we are called Brahman because we are spiritual. We are not this body. Brahman, transcendental. And then the Ishwara is called Parabrahman, is the ultimate Brahman, the infinitesimal Brahman. We are a finite Brahman. So many times in the example is given that like a piece of gold and the gold mine. It is the same gold. Qualities of gold are there in a small piece of gold. But then from the gold mine, different utilities, the utility is different and then the quality is different, right? Between the gold and the gold mine. So that's the description between the Brahman and Parabrahman. So there are other important details about God, Ishwara, that is described in the Bhagavad Gita. Ishwara is said to be the cause of all cause, Sarva Karana Karanam, and the source of everything that exists. So, we see cause and effect in this world. We see a cause, I ate something That was a little spoiled yesterday. Oh, now I have a tummy ache. So there was a cause, there's an effect. So when you start understanding every cause and effect, keep going back. What is the cause of that? What is the cause of that? What is the cause of that? Ultimately, you'll come to the point that ultimate cause is Ishwara, the Supreme Lord. He's also the Supreme Controller and the Supreme Proprietor and the Supreme Enjoyer. Now, Prabhupada used to call this, the peace formula. If you knew that Krishna is the supreme proprietor of everything in this world, he is the supreme enjoyer, he is the supreme controller, then everybody automatically, with that knowledge, we can live a very peaceful life. Because people today, we all fight in this world. We're born into this world in a certain situation, and you associate with the body, or with your family, or with your race or your country, right? And this is called different levels of extended selfishness. And our association with different levels leads us to act in different ways. There is impact on the world. But when we know that the Supreme Lord is the supreme enjoyer, he is the supreme proprietor, he is the supreme controller, that gives us ultimate happiness. And then he is full in 6 opulences. Ishwarya, that's wealth, fame, knowledge, Shruta, this is knowledge, renunciation, beauty, Shri, and strength. In different words are used. Bala is also one of the strengths that's used. So the Supreme Lord is one who is full of these 6 opulences. Prabhupada used to say, there are many rich people in this world, but can somebody say that I am the richest? There's nobody richer than me. For every one person who is rich, there is somebody else who is richer than them. You might say, oh, in this world, I don't know if it's Bill Gates now, Jeff Bezos, it keeps changing. I don't even know who is the richest at this point. Is he the richest? No. He may be richest in this earthly planet, but earthly planet is one small planet in this universe. There are others who are richer than them. Similarly, fame, famous, knowledge, renunciation, beauty and strength. We're all attracted when somebody possesses some of these things to a certain extent. We're all very attracted to it. But it is said that the Lord possesses all of this to the highest extent. And that's why it's considered the most attractive. The word Krishna means all attractive. Such a beautiful name. One of the names of the Lord is Krishna. It just means all attractive. There's one story Srila Prabhupada used to tell to illustrate, who is God, who's ultimate controller of everything. So just let me make sure I know we have about 11 minutes. Let me come back to the story in the end. There are a few more topics to cover. Once we cover that, I will just make sure we end with the story. Now, the other thing that when we talk about God, there is a question that comes up all the time. Is God personal or impersonal? How do you realize God? Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is described that he is realized at 3 levels. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And so all 3 of these are realizations of God, but It is the realization of God in different aspects. For example, when we say the earth, and you're looking at the earth, let's say from the moon, or you're traveling in space, you will see a bluish planet. There's a bluish glow, and you see that as a round circle of blue, and there's some glow. So we think that, oh, that is Earth. Yes, that is Earth. But as you come nearer, you start seeing, oh, there seems to be a lot of oceans. And in the middle of those oceans, there is some land. And that land, some of it is green and some of it is brown, right? At the spaceship level, when you're reaching the Earth's atmosphere, that's how you'd look at the Earth. Now, is that Earth? Yes, that is also Earth. But is that the entire story if you say, oh, Earth is planet of oceans and some land and some trees? No, but when you come closer and start getting closer and closer, you'll see, oh, wow, there's actually cities on Earth. And there are people over there. And, nowadays there isn't one single ruler, but let's assume that, okay, we'll still assume United States is the biggest nation in the world in terms of military strength at least. And there is a president of the United States who is like, under some people's consideration, the most powerful person. So that is also Earth. That's also a deeper understanding of Earth, but it's a different understanding. So similarly, the three levels are described. Brahman, the impersonal Brahman Jyoti, it is the effulgence coming out of the spiritual world. That's called the Brahman. Then, when you start understanding the Paramatma is present in the heart, localized aspect of God, is the next level of understanding of God. The more intimate and personal understanding of God is the understanding of God as Bhagavan, right? The absolute truth, the personal absolute truth, Bhagavan. So these are the three levels of understanding: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Okay. And then there is a description of what's the difference between the Brahman aspect and which is impersonal, and Bhagavan. We won't spend too much time here, but I'll just quickly briefly mention. One is that Brahman is Nir Guna, without qualities. We heard the word Nir Guna. And then Bhagavan is Saguna, has spiritual forms and qualities. We shouldn't confuse with our material forms and material qualities, because those are temporary. But this is spiritual. The Brahman is inconceivable. The Bhagavan possesses inconceivable potencies. The Brahman is all pervading. Now, the Bhagavan is all pervading by his energies, but he is localized. He is a person whose energies are all pervading. Now, there are things that are same. Brahman is also unchanging, fixed and immovable. Similar thing can be said of Bhagavan. Now, we cannot understand the opulences of Brahman because of the Nirguna aspect of Brahman. But then when we get closer, we understand, just like, we look at the earth, you don't understand that there are people, there are cities, there are, all these different things happening. So those, that deeper understanding of Bhagavan as the possessor of the six opulences. Bhagavan, these are the opulences, one who possesses. Now, the other aspect is that there's a risk of not realizing the absolute truth because you're only seeing partial. But if you understand, you look at Earth from a distance and just move away from there, you'll never find out that Earth has actually billions of people living there, and there are people and rules and all that. Right? And that way, that's why it is said that the Brahman understanding is a partial understanding. Um, the you realize the Sat, the eternal aspect, and maybe the Chit aspect. What is missing is the Ananda, the bliss aspect, which is only understood only as Bhagavan. Okay? So these are I'll read some interesting slokas from the Gita where Krishna is explaining some of this. As I said, the next first six chapters talk about the Jiva. The next six chapters talk about Ishwara. So in the 10th canto, 10th chapter, text number 8, Krishna is saying, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who know this perfectly engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. In the 7th chapter, text number 6, Etad yonini bhutani sarvaniti upadharaya aham krishnasya jagataha prabhavah pralayastata. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both its origin and dissolution. Pralaya is dissolution, Prabhava is origin. There are a few other slokas, very interesting. 10th canto again, 10th chapter, text 4 to 5. Buddhir gnanam asammoha kshamas satyam damas samaha sukham dukkham bhavo abhavo bhayam cha bhayam yevacha ahimsa samata tushtis tapodhanam yasho yashaha bhavanti bhava bhutanam matta eva putag vidaha. Intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness, self-control and calmness, pleasure and pain, birth, death, fear, fearlessness, non-violence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame and infamy are created by me alone. This gets a little bit into the technical details of the Lord. The Lord is the father of all being. He says, Pitamaha asyam jagato mata datha pitamaha. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtaya sambhavantiyaha tasam brahma mahad yonir aham bija pradapitaha. The bija pradapita, we keep quoting, is that I am the seed-giving father of the entire universe. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material world, nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. And finally, this last verse we'll talk about, Bhagavad Gita 7.7. Martaha parataram nanyat kinchit asti dhananjaya Mai sarvam idam protam sutre manigana iva. O Dhananjaya, O conqueror of the wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Mattaha parataram. Parataram means superior. Na anyat. Na anyat does not exist. Kinchit asti. Mai sarvam idam protam. Everything rests upon me, just like the pearls are strung on a thread. So we see here, Krishna is describing the nature of the Ishwara, and he is describing the different aspects of the Lord as Paramatma, as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan ultimately. And so he's introducing these two very important topics, who we are and who the Lord is. And he shows how eternally we are service of the Lord. And our ultimate happiness is in serving the whole. The parts, ultimate happiness is serving the whole. And just like with the hands, happiness is in putting food to the mouth, goes to the belly, and the energy comes to the hand. So that description is given. We're coming up to the hour. Anybody has any quick questions or comments before we end? Wonderful. Thank you all for joining. Hopefully this was helpful for you to prepare for the test that you're all trying to take. I look forward to your participation. Kishore, you'll share some details.
Yeah, so thank you everyone. So based on today's and yesterday's sessions, we will have a quiz tomorrow as advertised. So please go through it. We will send out the recording for reference as well, today's session as well as yesterday's session, and the material. And please go through it. And tomorrow evening at the same time, 7 o'clock, we will have a wonderful, entertaining quiz. So you can get the best of both the worlds. That's all I have for you today.
Excuse me, sir.
Any other clarifications needed?
Just one question from me. Is it the quiz going to be multiple choice questions, or it could be like subjective type?
It will be a combination. It will not be subjective in the sense you will not be required to write a paragraph. It will be a fill in the blank, 1 or 2 words, or multiple choice. You will have to install an application called Kahoot, if you have heard about it. Have you heard about this app? We will send you instructions how to download
No,
it.
I haven't heard about Kahoot.
A very
No.
simple application you can download on your phones, or you can go to your browser on your computer and you can use it.
Okay.
We'll send you all the instructions.
And do we need to answer verbally, or would it be written answers on Kahoot?
It will be written answers. You don't need to answer verbally. You have to type in your answers or select
Got
your
it.
answers if it's
Got
your
it. Thank you very much.
choice. Sure. All right. Any other questions, clarifications? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.